We heard in the first reading today, Jerusalem, take off your robe of mourning and misery and put on the splendor of glory from God forever. For God will show all the earth your splendor. You will be named by God forever, the peace of justice, the glory of God's worship. Through that reading from the prophet Baruch, God promises to his people who have been broken and destroyed that he will cover them with his glory and restore them to glory. You see, they're God's chosen people. He loves them. And he wants to return to them the glory that is theirs because they're his chosen people. But what is the glory of God? Glory is a very important biblical concept. God is glorious. And when he reveals himself in the scriptures, people experience and see his glory. For example, you think of the Old Testament, when Ezekiel saw the glory of God filling the temple and they couldn't even see or enter, and they hid their faces. Or you think of the New Testament, when Jesus goes up on the mountain and he reveals his glory to his closest apostles at the Transfiguration. Again, they hid their faces because they were in the presence of God. Jesus came, though, not just to reveal his glory. He came to reveal your glory and my glory. You see, Jesus came to make us glorious. As St. Peter said, he came to make us partakers of his divine nature. That is, to divinize us or to make us like him. He actually wants us to share in his glory. So we could say, just as he said to Jerusalem, Jesus came to take off our robe of mourning and misery and to put on us the splendor of his divine glory so that we can live in the glorious freedom of the children of God. C.S. Lewis, the famous apologist for the Christian faith, the one who defended the Christian faith so well at the beginning of the 20th century, he wrote a sermon once called The Weight of Glory. He was a layman, so he didn't preach many sermons, but he did preach this one at Vespers. And in that sermon, he points out that we tend to think of glory two ways. The first is we think of a light bulb, like an iridescent light bulb, and we think, okay, that's glorious. Light is shining from us. But when we think of the glory of heaven, who of us wants to become like a light bulb, right? The second way we think of it is like human fame. Someone who's a really good athlete or a really good actress or a really great musician, they get all the glory. That is all the attention of people. But again, we know that can't be what is meant by biblical glory. So what is God's glory? And what is Jesus revealing to us when he reveals his glory? Well, let's go back to that scene of the Transfiguration. What happens there? Well, what happens is Jesus is revealed as the beloved Son of the Father. Jesus allows us to see that the Father delights in him. In fact, this is what the voice from heaven says. This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. And even later in the Gospel, when Jesus speaks about revealing his glory through the cross, what does he say? He says, I am troubled now, but yet what should I say? Father, save me from this hour? It was for this purpose that I came to this hour. Father, glorify your name. Then a voice from heaven said, I have glorified it, and I will glorify it again. Jesus goes through his passion to glorify his Father, to reveal his true love for his Father. And in this way, Jesus opens up for us the way to glory. What is the true glory that God wants to give you and me? What's the glory that he wants us to live for? It's not human fame, not that others would look at us in awe. Rather, it's that God himself would delight in you and in me. In fact, when you listen to what the scriptures describe heaven, how do they say? They say, in heaven, God will look upon us and say, well done, good and faithful servant. It's as if God will delight in us the way an artist delights in his work. The Father will smile upon us and give us glory. That is that incredible sense that I am known and loved and precious to God himself. To live for the glory of God is to live that I might delight God and that he might delight in me. The irony about this glory, though, is it's not just something we have in heaven. Actually, because of your baptism, you already have it. if you're living in a state of grace because you're free from any sin that separates you from God, then you can know already that you're beginning to share in God's glory. Remember what St. John said in his letter. He said, "See what love the Father has bestowed on us, that we should be called children of God, and so we are. The reason the world does not know us is it did not know Him. Beloved, we are God's children now. It does not yet appear what we shall be, but we know that when it appears, we shall be like Him, for we shall see Him as He is." Already, because I'm a son of God, because you're a daughter of God, you share in His glory. Already, He delights in you. And when I realize who I am as a beloved daughter of God or a beloved son of God, then it's this glory that strengthens me to reveal His love to others and to live in His love. And what's actually meant to happen is that as I receive this unconditional, unmerited love of God for me as His beloved son and daughter, then I begin to radiate that glory to the world around me. He clothes me in glory so that I can show it to others. You can see examples of this that happen in the Scriptures. One of the many examples we could use is from the woman caught in adultery. Think for a moment of the shame that that woman feels, caught in the act of adultery, brought before all these men, and they're about to stone her. And yet when Jesus convinces them all to go away, it's just her and Jesus left. And then Jesus says to her, "Has no one condemned you?" She says, "No one, sir." He says, "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." What a beautiful thing to put ourselves in the place of that woman. All of us know our own sinfulness. And yet to receive that gaze of Jesus saying, "I don't condemn you. I love you." Right in that moment, that woman's dignity, her glory is restored to her. And now she has a new strength to be able to go forward and to sin no more. You see, it's actually in receiving the glory of God that I'm able to live for the glory of God. This truth, if we come to understand it, is so present for us in the Holy Eucharist. It's true that these words which we say at the centurion every Mass mark us. You remember those words. "Lord, I am not worthy that you should enter under my roof, but only say the word and my soul shall be healed." All of us can put those words on our own hearts and lips as we do at every Mass. None of us are worthy by our own self to come into the presence of God, and certainly not to receive Him under our roof, into our hearts, right? But in fact, Jesus, through His death, has glorified us. And Jesus desires to come to us. In fact, He longs for every person to come and receive Him. Of course, we must always receive Him worthily. We must confess any grave sins that we're aware of before coming to communion. But He desires that we would come. In fact, as you're in the pew waiting to come up to communion, He's longing that you would come so He can be united with you. Why? He wants to take off your robe of shame and cover you with a robe of glory. He wants to enter into you so that you can experience the glory of being the son or daughter of the Father just as He is. And you see, that receiving of Holy Communion, it's just a small pledge of glory. In fact, that's what the Fathers of the Church called receiving communion, a pledge of glory. It's a taste of what it will mean that day when we get to see Jesus face to face, when we get to stand before the Father and have Him delight in us the way an artist delights in his work. That moment of receiving Holy Communion is a taste of glory, and it strengthens us to be able to live for His glory in this world, so that one day we will come to know the fullness of His glory. During this Advent season, as we meditate on the fact that all of us are called to glory, let's ask that we might receive His love in Holy Communion and be strengthened to live for His glory. God bless you.